My father spent $180,000 to turn my brother into a doctor. To me, he said, girls don't need degrees. Just find a good husband. He had no idea that 12 years later, I would be the one holding a human heart in my hands, and the woman my brother was about to marry was only alive because of my operating table. Before I tell you what really happened that night, if you believe in stories where truth wins, where strength rises from silence, then take a moment to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share it with someone who needs to hear this. And if you've ever felt invisible in your own family, leave a comment. I read every single one. My name is Myra Mercer. For 32 years I was the daughter no one saw. Not because I was quiet, not because I didn't try, but because in my family being a daughter meant being less. We lived in a beautiful neighborhood in Maryland. The kind where every house looked like it came out of a magazine. Fresh paint, perfect lawns, smiling neighbors. But inside our home things were different. Everything revolved around my brother, Tyler. His wins were celebrations. His failures were excuses. His future was an investment. And me? I was just there. I remember the night everything became clear. I was 18, sitting at the dining table, holding my college acceptance letter in both hands. My fingers were shaking, but not from fear, from hope. I had done everything right. Top grades, scholarships, late nights, early mornings. I thought maybe this time my father would look at me and feel proud. He didn't even open the letter. He leaned back in his chair, slowly swirling his drink like nothing I said could matter more than that glass in his hand. Then he looked at me for maybe 2 seconds and smiled. Not a kind smile, a dismissive one. He said, "That's nice, Myra, but we've already decided where the money is going." I didn't understand at first. "Tyler's tuition," he added like it was obvious. "He's going to be a doctor." I swallowed hard. I got into a medical program too. That made him laugh. Actually laugh. "Girls don't need all that stress," he said. "You'll marry someone successful. That's your security." It felt like something inside me just went quiet. Not broken, not angry, just silent. I nodded, stood up, walked to my room, and that night I didn't cry. I opened my laptop, and I started applying for jobs. 3 applications turned into 7. 7 turned into 15. By sunrise I had a plan. If no one was going to invest in me, I would build myself. The next 4 years were not pretty. They were not inspiring. They were not the kind of struggle people post about online with soft music and motivational quotes. They were exhausting. I woke up at 4:30 every morning to get ready for my breakfast shift at a small diner. By 5, I was already pouring coffee for strangers who barely looked at my face. Some were kind. Most were not. By 10 I would rush to class. I sat in the front row, not because I was confident, but because I couldn't afford to miss anything. I didn't have tutors. I didn't have help. I only had focus. In the afternoons I worked at the campus library, shelving books, cleaning tables, sometimes studying in the quiet corners when no one was watching. At night I tutored other students. The same subjects my father once said were too hard for me. Biology, chemistry, anatomy. I explained things to others that I was still teaching myself. And when I finally got back to my tiny apartment, it was close to midnight. 5 hours later I would wake up and do it all again. Every day felt the same. Work, study, survive. There were moments when my body felt like it would just give up. I remember one winter morning when my shoes literally broke on the way to work. The sole came off halfway down the street. I stood there in the cold holding it in my hand, wondering if this was the moment I should just stop, go home, give up, accept what my father believed about me. But instead, I went back to my apartment, grabbed glue, fixed the shoe, and kept walking. Because something inside me refused to agree with him, refused to believe that my life was already decided. Years passed like this, quietly, without applause, without recognition. When graduation day came, I wore a borrowed dress under my gown. My hands were steady, but my heart, It kept looking for someone in the crowd. My mother, my father, even Tyler. They weren't there. Later I found out why. Tyler had a soccer game. I graduated summa cum laude, and no one in my family even saw it. I stood there after the ceremony holding my degree, surrounded by families taking photos, hugging, crying, and for a moment, I felt it, that sharp, deep loneliness. But then something unexpected happened. I smiled, not because I was happy they weren't there, but because for the first time, I understood something clearly. I had done this alone, and that meant no one could take it away from me. Not their silence, not their disbelief, not even their absence. That was just the beginning, because getting into medical school without support was only step one. The real challenge came after. 12 years. That's how long it took. 12 years of training, of sacrifice, of pushing past limits I didn't even know existed. Residency was brutal. There were nights I didn't sleep at all. Days when I forgot what sunlight looked like. Moments when the pressure felt so heavy it was hard to breathe. But I never stopped. Not once. Because every time I held a scalpel, every time I stood in an operating room, I remembered that girl sitting at the dining table, being told she wasn't worth the investment. And I proved that voice wrong again and again. Slowly, quietly, I became someone no one expected. A cardiothoracic surgeon. One of the hardest paths in medicine. The kind of work where every second matters. Where every decision can mean life or death. And the day I got my position at Johns Hopkins, I didn't call my family. I didn't celebrate. I just sat in my car for a few minutes, holding the letter, letting it sink in. Then I went inside and got ready for my next shift, because that's what my life had become. Not about proving them wrong anymore, but about doing something that mattered. Saving lives, one patient at a time. And eventually, I bought myself something small, a gold medical ring. Nothing flashy, nothing expensive, but to me it meant everything. It was proof. Proof that the girl they ignored had built something real, something powerful, something undeniable. They didn't know about it. They didn't know about me. And honestly, I didn't think they ever would. Until the invitation came. Tyler's engagement party. Perfect night. A perfect family. And a truth that was about to change everything. The invitation arrived on a quiet Tuesday morning. I almost ignored it. It was sitting there in my inbox between patient reports and surgical schedules, with a subject line that felt strangely formal. Tyler Mercer engagement celebration. For a second I just stared at it. I hadn't spoken to my family in months. Not a call. Not a message. Not even a casual check-in. That kind of silence becomes normal after a while. Comfortable even. But this was different. I opened the email slowly. The event was being held at the Bethesda Country Club. Of course it was. Everything in my family had to look perfect from the outside. There was a short message from my mother at the bottom. Hope you can come. Keep it simple. That was it. No, we miss you. No, we're proud of you. Just keep it simple. I almost laughed. 12 years of building a life from nothing, and I was still being asked to stay small. I should have said no. I had every reason to, but something inside me, something quiet but persistent, told me to go. Not for them, not for Tyler, but for myself. So I replied with one word. Okay. The day of the party, I finished a long surgery just hours before the event. 7 hours in the operating room. My body was tired, my shoulders heavy, but my hands steady as always. I drove home in silence. No music. No distractions. Just my thoughts. I stood in front of my closet for a long time, not because I didn't have anything to wear, but because I didn't know who I was supposed to be that night. The invisible daughter? Or the woman I had become? In the end, I chose something simple. A clean, elegant black dress. No bright colors. No attention-seeking details. Just quiet confidence. I tied my hair back neatly. Minimal makeup. And as I reached for my bag, my eyes landed on the one thing I never left behind. My ring. The the gold band from Johns Hopkins. For a moment I hesitated, not because I was ashamed of it, but because I knew wearing it would change things. It was not just a piece of jewelry. It was a statement, a truth. And truths have a way of making people uncomfortable. Still, I slipped it onto my finger. Let them be uncomfortable. The drive to the country club felt longer than it should have. As I pulled into the entrance, I saw luxury cars lined up like a display. Valet parking. Soft golden lights. Laughter drifting through the air. Everything looked perfect. Just like always. I stepped out of the car and walked inside. The room was full. Champagne glasses. Expensive suits. Perfect smiles. And for a second, I felt it again. That old feeling. Like I didn't belong. Like I was stepping into a world where my presence didn't matter. But then I reminded myself, I didn't come here to belong. I came here to stand. I stayed near the back of the room just observing. No one noticed me at first. That wasn't new. I watched my father across the room, surrounded by his usual circle, laughing loudly, telling stories, playing the role he always played. The successful man, the proud father. I wondered if he even remembered I was coming. My mother saw me first. She walked over quickly, her smile tight, controlled. "Myra," she said softly, looking me up and down. "You look nice." "Nice." I nodded. "Thank you." She leaned in slightly. "Just stay in the background, okay? Tonight is important for Tyler." Of course it was. I didn't argue. "I understand," I said. Because I did. I had always understood my place in this family, or at least the place they gave me. A few minutes later, Tyler finally noticed me. He walked over with that same easy confidence he had always carried, the kind that comes from never being questioned. "Myra," he said, like he was greeting a distant acquaintance. "You made it." "I did," I replied calmly. He smiled, but there was something uncertain behind it, like he wasn't quite sure how to act around me anymore. "Good," he said. "Just, keep things light tonight." Light, simple, invisible, different words, same meaning. Then he turned his attention back to his guests. And just like that, I was alone again. But this time it didn't feel the same. As I wasn't the same. I picked up a glass of water and stood quietly, watching everything unfold. The decorations were flawless. Soft lights, elegant flowers, carefully arranged tables. Every detail planned to perfection. And at the center of it all, Rachel, Tyler's fiancée. She was beautiful. Not just in the obvious way, but in the way she carried herself. Calm, graceful, present. She smiled as she spoke to guests, but there was something deeper in her expression. Something thoughtful. Something real. And for a brief moment our eyes met. She didn't look away. That caught me off guard. Most people did. Instead, her gaze shifted slowly down to my hand, to my ring. I felt it before I even saw her reaction. A pause. A flicker of recognition. Then confusion. She excused herself from the group she was with and started walking toward me. Each step felt deliberate, intentional, and suddenly the air around me felt different, charged, like something unseen was about to surface. She stopped in front of me, her eyes still fixed on the ring. "I'm sorry," she said gently. "This might sound strange, but where did you get that?" I glanced down at my hand, then back at her. "From where I work," I replied simply. She looked closer now, her expression shifting from curiosity to something deeper. "Johns Hopkins?" she asked, her voice quieter. I nodded. "Yes." There was a long pause, and in that silence, I saw it. Recognition. Not the kind you fake at a party, the kind that comes from memory, from something real. Her hand slowly moved to her chest, like she was trying to steady her breath. "I know that ring," she whispered. And in that moment, I realized something I wasn't expecting. This night was not going to stay simple. Rachel's eyes didn't leave my face. Not for a second. It wasn't curiosity anymore. It was certainty. The kind that comes from a memory you never forget, even if you try. I know that ring, she said again, softer this time. I've seen it before. I felt the room continue around us. Laughter, glasses clinking, music playing gently in the background. But between us, everything went still. I looked at her carefully now, really looked, and suddenly something clicked. Not her face exactly, but the feeling. A moment, a night, a fight against time. 3 years ago, 2 in the morning, rain hitting the hospital windows like it was trying to break through. A trauma call came in. Female, mid-20s, severe chest compression, possible internal bleeding, no stable vitals. I remember walking fast down the hallway, pulling on gloves, my mind already moving ahead of my body. There's no space for hesitation in those moments. No time for doubt. Only action. They rushed her in. Her body was still. Too still. Machines screaming around her. The team looked at me, waiting. Always waiting. Because in that room, I was the final decision. Prep for emergency thoracotomy, I said. No hesitation. No second guessing. Her chest had taken a direct impact. The sternum crushed. Internal damage everywhere. Her heart, barely holding on. Most people wouldn't have survived the transport. But she did. And that meant one thing. We had a chance. 7 hours. That's how long we fought. 7 hours of precision. Of pressure. Of pushing past exhaustion. There were moments her heart tried to stop. Moments when the monitors went silent for just a second too long. Moments when the entire room held its breath. But I didn't stop. Because giving up wasn't an option. Not for me. Not for her. At one point, a nurse whispered, "We're losing her." And I remember saying something I didn't even think about. Not today. And I meant it. Every movement. Every stitch. Every decision carried that same weight. Not today. When we finally stabilized her, when her heartbeat found its rhythm again, the entire room felt it. That quiet shift. From fear to relief. I stepped back, pulling off my gloves slowly. My hands were steady, but inside, I felt it. That silent victory. Not loud, not celebrated, but real. Another life still here. Because I didn't give up. I never saw her again after that. That's how it works sometimes. You save someone, and then they disappear back into their life. And you move on to the next patient, the next fight, the next night. I didn't expect to ever see her again. Until now, standing right in front of me, at my brother's engagement party. Rachel took a step closer, her eyes starting to fill. "It was you," she said, her voice breaking slightly. "You were the surgeon that night." I didn't respond immediately, as I didn't need to. We both knew. "I didn't remember your face," she continued, her words coming faster now. "But I remember your voice, your hands. The way everyone listened when you spoke." She let out a shaky breath. "You're the reason I'm alive." The words landed quietly, but they carried more weight than anything else in that room. Around us, people were starting to notice. Not the full story, but the shift, the tension. Rachel turned slightly, looking toward Tyler. He was laughing with a group of guests, completely unaware of what was happening just a few feet away. She looked back at me. "You're his sister?" she asked. I nodded once. "Yes." There was confusion in her eyes now. Real confusion. "He never told me," she said. "Of course he didn't." I gave a small, calm smile. "There's a lot he didn't tell you." That's when Tyler finally noticed us. He walked over, still smiling, but it faded the moment he saw Rachel's expression. "Hey, what's going on?" he asked, glancing between us. Rachel didn't answer right away. She was still looking at me, still processing. Then she turned to him. "Why didn't you tell me your sister is a surgeon?" she asked directly. Tyler blinked. Just for a second. But I saw it. That flash of panic. "It's not a big deal," he said quickly. "She works in medical administration." There it was. The lie. So simple. So practiced. Rachel's expression hardened. "Administration," she repeated. "At Johns Hopkins?" Tyler hesitated. And in that hesitation, everything started to crack. My father noticed the tension and made his way over, his presence filling the space instantly. "What's the issue here?" he asked, his tone controlled but sharp. Rachel didn't back down. She pointed at my hand. "That ring," she said. "Do you know what it means?" My father barely looked. "It's just something she picked up from work," he replied dismissively. That was it. That was the moment. Not loud, not dramatic, but final. 12 years of silence. 12 years of shrinking. 12 years of letting them define me. Ended right there. I took a small step forward. Not aggressive. Not emotional. Just certain. "It's not something I picked up," I said calmly. 3 pairs of eyes turned to me. My father. My brother. Rachel. And for the first time in my life, I didn't feel invisible. I met my father's gaze. Steady. Unshaken. "I earned it," I continued. The room around us had grown quieter now. People were watching, listening, waiting. "I'm not in administration," I said. A pause. Then the truth. Clear. Simple. Unstoppable. "I'm a cardiothoracic surgeon at Johns Hopkins." Silence. Real silence. The kind that doesn't fade quickly. Tyler's face went pale. My father's expression didn't change at first, but his eyes did. And Rachel just stared at me, like everything she thought she knew had just been rewritten. But I wasn't finished, because for the first time, I wasn't speaking to defend myself. I was speaking the truth, and the truth doesn't ask for permission. The silence didn't break right away. It stretched across the room, heavy and uncomfortable, like no one knew who should speak first, or what they were even allowed to say anymore. I could feel every eye on us now. The quiet daughter who stood in the back was no longer invisible. My father let out a small laugh, not because anything was funny, but because that was his way of regaining control. "Let's not make a scene," he said smoothly, placing a hand on Tyler's shoulder. "Myra has always been independent. She likes to exaggerate things." Exaggerate. That word hung in the air. 12 years of work, reduced to a personality trait. I didn't react. Didn't argue. Didn't raise my voice. Because this wasn't about convincing him anymore. Rachel stepped forward before I could say anything. "No," she said firmly. "She's not exaggerating." Her voice was calm, but it carried weight. The kind of weight that comes from truth. She turned to the guests now, her composure still intact, but her eyes clear and unwavering. 3 years ago, I was in a car accident," she said. "I was brought into the hospital barely alive. Crushed chest. Internal bleeding. No one thought I would make it." The room grew even quieter. You could feel it. That shift from curiosity to attention. "She operated on me," Rachel continued, her voice soft but steady. 7 hours. That's what they told me later. 7 hours she fought to keep me alive. She looked at me again. "And she did." A murmur moved through the crowd. Small at first, then growing. People glanced at each other, whispering, connecting pieces that didn't make sense just minutes ago. My father's jaw tightened. "This isn't the time for," he started, but Rachel cut him off. "No," she said again, stronger this time. "This is exactly the time." She turned to Tyler, and everything about her expression changed. Not anger, not even disappointment, but clarity. Pure, undeniable clarity. "Why didn't you tell me?" she asked. Tyler opened his mouth, then closed it again. For the first time in his life, he didn't have an easy answer. "It just didn't come up," he said weakly. Rachel shook her head slowly. "That's not true," she replied. "Something like this doesn't just not come up. You hid it." Tyler's eyes flickered toward my father. Just for a second. But it was enough. 'Cause Rachel saw it too. And so did I. My father stepped in again, his tone sharper now. "There's no reason to turn this into a bigger issue than it is," he said. "Tyler has worked very hard for everything he has. That's what matters tonight. Worked very hard. The words echoed in my mind, because I knew something they didn't. Something I hadn't planned to say. Not tonight. Not like this. But the truth has a way of finding its moment. And this was it. I looked at Tyler. Really looked at him. At the confidence that was starting to crack. At the version of himself he had been allowed to build, without ever being questioned. Then I spoke. "Rachel," I said gently. She turned to me immediately. "Yes." I took a small breath. Not because I was nervous, but because I knew once I said this, there was no going back. "You deserve the full truth," I said. Tyler stiffened. "Myra, don't," he started. But I didn't stop, because I had spent too many years being silent. "Tyler isn't a doctor," I said. The words landed softly, but the impact, immediate. "What?" Rachel whispered. Tyler stepped forward quickly, his voice rising. This isn't the place for this. "You left your residency 2 years ago," I continued calmly. Now the room was completely still. No whispers. No movement. Just silence. "And you never went back," I added. Tyler's face changed. The confidence gone. Replaced by something raw. Something exposed. "That's not true," he said, but his voice didn't match the words. It wasn't strong. It wasn't certain. It was breaking. I held his gaze. "You told them you were finishing your training," I said. "You told everyone you were almost done." I paused, then finished it. "But you've been working in pharmaceutical sales." The truth was out. Fully. Completely. Irreversible. A ripple moved through the crowd. Shock. Confusion. Realization. Rachel took a slow step back. Her hand instinctively moved to her ring. The engagement ring. The symbol of everything she believed in. "Is that true?" she asked quietly. Tyler didn't answer. Because he couldn't. Because the silence said everything. My father stepped forward again, but this time he didn't look in control. "This is ridiculous," he snapped. "Even if there were changes in Tyler's career path, that doesn't diminish his success." Success. The word felt empty now. Hollow. Rachel looked at him, then at Tyler, then at me. And in that moment, something inside her settled. A decision. Clear. Final. She slowly removed the ring from her finger. The movement was quiet, but every person in that room felt it. "This isn't about your job," she said softly to Tyler. "It's about the lie." Tyler took a step toward her. "Rachel, please." But she shook her head. "You let me believe something that wasn't real," she continued. "And worse, you let me stand here tonight, celebrating a life that doesn't exist." Her voice didn't shake. Not once. "I almost died," she said, her eyes glistening now. "And the person who saved me, you tried to erase her." That hit harder than anything else. Not loud, but undeniable. She placed the ring on the nearest table, right next to a glass of untouched champagne. "I can't marry someone I don't trust," she said. And just like that, it was over. No shouting. No drama. Just truth standing where lies used to be. Rachel turned and walked away. The crowd parted without a word. And for the first time in his life, Tyler had nothing left to say. My father stood frozen. The man who built everything on image, watching it collapse in seconds. And me? I didn't feel victorious. I didn't feel angry. I felt clear. Like something heavy had finally been set down. The invisible daughter was invisible no more. Rachel didn't look back. Not once. The doors closed behind her, and the sound echoed through the room like the final line of a story no one was ready to hear. For a few seconds no one moved. The music had stopped. Conversations had died mid-sentence. Even the staff stood still, unsure whether to continue serving drinks or quietly disappear. Because something real had just happened. Not polished. Not planned. Real. My brother stood frozen, staring at the door where his future had just walked out. "Myra," he said finally, his voice low, almost unrecognizable. "Why would you do that?" I looked at him. Not with anger. Not with satisfaction. Just honesty. I didn't do anything, I said calmly. I told the truth. He shook his head, running a hand through his hair. You ruined everything, he whispered. I let that sit for a moment, 'cause once, I would have believed that. Once, I would have carried that blame. But not anymore. No, I replied quietly. I didn't ruin it. I just didn't protect it. That difference mattered. More than he understood. My father stepped forward again, but this time, his presence felt smaller. Not weaker exactly. Just less certain. You had no right to embarrass this family, he said, his voice tight. I met his eyes. And for the first time in my life, I didn't feel like his daughter in that moment. I felt like someone he didn't understand. This family, I repeated softly. The one that never even acknowledged I existed? He didn't answer. Because there was no answer that could erase years of silence. You introduced me tonight as someone in admin, I continued. You told people I was just a relative. I took a slow breath. I saved her life, I said, glancing toward the door Rachel had walked through. And you still chose to make me small. That landed. Not loudly, but deeply. My mother stepped closer then. Quiet, careful. She had always been the one who said the least. The one who stayed in the background of every decision my father made. But now her eyes were different. There was something in them I hadn't seen before. Regret. Myra, she said softly. I didn't know. I looked at her. And for a second, I saw the truth. Maybe she really didn't know everything. Maybe she had spent years convincing herself that silence was easier than conflict. But silence has a cost. And we were all standing in it. I know, I said gently. That was all. No anger. No blame. Because at this point, I wasn't looking for apologies. I wasn't looking for explanations. I had already built my life without them. The room slowly started to come back to life. Whispers returned. People shifted uncomfortably. Some avoided eye contact. Others looked at me differently now. Not as the invisible daughter, but as something else. Something they hadn't expected, respected, recognized. But it didn't change anything inside me. Because I didn't come here for their approval. I came here and I stood in my truth. And that was enough. Tyler sat down heavily in one of the chairs, his head in his hands. For the first time, he looked like someone who didn't know what came next. And maybe that was something he needed to face on his own. I picked up my bag quietly. No one tried to stop me. No one asked me to stay. And honestly, that felt right. As I walked toward the exit, I passed the table where Rachel had left the ring. It caught the light for a second. Bright, perfect, and empty. I didn't touch it. Some things aren't meant to be picked up again. Outside, the night air felt different. Cooler. Lighter. Like I could finally breathe fully. I walked to my car slowly, not rushing, not looking back. Because there was nothing behind me I needed anymore. When I sat down, I didn't start the engine right away. I just sat there, hands resting on the wheel, letting everything settle. The past. The silence. The years of being unseen. All of it felt distant now. Not erased. But no longer holding me in place. My phone buzzed softly. A message. Unknown number. I opened it. It was from Rachel. Thank you. For saving my life. And for telling the truth tonight. I stared at the screen for a moment. Then I smiled. A real one. Not forced. Not hidden. Just real. I typed back slowly. You deserved both. I put the phone down and finally started the car. As I drove away, I realized something important. I had spent years thinking visibility came from being accepted, from being chosen, from being acknowledged by the people who were supposed to love you. But that wasn't true. Visibility comes from within, from knowing who you are, even when no one else sees it, from building something so real that it doesn't depend on anyone else's approval. I didn't need my father to say he was proud. I didn't need my brother to recognize me. I didn't even need that room full of people to understand my story, because I already knew it. I lived it. I earned it. I am Myra Mercer. I am a cardiothoracic surgeon. I save lives. And I am no longer invisible. If this story meant something to you, if you've ever felt unseen, unheard, or underestimated, don't stay silent. Like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share it with someone who needs to remember their worth. And tell me in the comments, have you ever had a moment where you finally chose yourself?